Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes give their top 6 7+ player games. Then they look back at the review of El Gaucho and their Dukes Double-Take. And finally, they talk about their preferred player color. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody! Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And this is episode 108 of the Dukes of Dice podcast that we're calling the Magnificent 7+.
Yes.
Which makes a considerable amount of sense, Alex, since we're talking about El Gaucho and our Dukes Double-Take, kind of a Western-themed game. Well, South American Western, in one sense. And we're talking about high player count games. So, Magnificent 7+, of course, based off the Magnificent 7 movie. There's a remake coming out, which was based on the Seven Samurai by Kurosawa. Have you seen
I have seen the Seven Samurai, but not the Magnificent 7.
Okay. The old Magnificent 7.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited for the new one. It's got Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
I like Chris Pratt.
Yeah. By the way, for this name, first time we've ever had to Schwazi for it.
Yeah.
So we broke out the Schwazi app, and Sean put his thumb on, I put my thumb on, and Sean ended up winning.
Well, let's talk real quick about this. So we name our episodes with help from our Board Game Geek Guild number 2008. And if you want to go help name episodes in the future, go on over there, and we'll talk about our runners-up at the end of the episode. However, this was the first time, I'm pretty sure this was the first time, Alex, right, where we've had a back-to-back winner, Scott Sexton, longtime bridesmaid, because he always came as a runner-up, but he named last week's episode and now this week's.
All that practice paid off.
There you go.
All that bridesmaid practice.
Good job, Scott, naming episode 108.
Speaking of the Guild, a lot of stuff on the Guild this week, Sean. Cult of the New, there's a whole topic on there about folks talking about...
Suzanne started that, yeah.
Right, when a game becomes Cult of the New. Hey, Suzanne! It was fantastic seeing you. I just got back from Seattle, by the way, where I saw the lovely Suzanne, Duke Suzanne. Fantastic seeing her, and we'll talk a little bit more about that whole trip and Mock's boarding house in Seattle, which is unreal.
Cool.
Anyway, also on the Guild, games bought because of the Dukes, so some folks kind of putting on... Now, I'd like to see games that folks bought because of the Dukes that they later regretted. I know Cameron mentioned a couple on there, but anyway.
Well, I think 2 of them. I've seen a lot of baseball highlights.
Yes.
As a regret, though, and Motainai. However, there's still been a lot of people that have liked baseball highlights and then Motainai eventually.
Yes.
There's been a kind of a common theme of people not liking Motainai initially and then trying to get a couple more plays of it in with like a same group of people. And then all of a sudden they like it. So that's kind of cool. And I think that's a pretty common experience with Motainai.
We also had a thread about game bling. Someone posted a thread about that on there, which I think we've discussed as a discussion topic on the show before.
We have.
But it was cool to see that kind of crop up again because you always get to see pictures of how people bling out games. I saw Chris Holm posted another picture of his UV set of, I can't remember the name of the game.
Oh, they were
playing
on Wednesday night. I'm completely blanking.
Yeah, but it looks ridiculously cool. Yeah, so that's on the Guild. But the other cool piece of news is at the Wednesday Dukes of Dice game night over at Empire Board Game Library, somebody brought a cake. Yeah,
so our buddy Dan, another attorney, brought in his birthday cake. So he had a friend at work that made him actually 2 cakes. Both of them were in the shape of the Dukes of Dice logo. And it was a delicious cake. It was very good, and it looked really cool. And Alex, you put some pictures up online of that.
I did. Yeah. It was really cool to see that.
Yeah.
Really cool to see.
Yeah, it was really cool. I really enjoyed that. It had little red leaves around the edge. It was really cool.
Now, you were upset the monocle was missing.
No. The monocle was there. The monocle string was missing.
Oh.
How else you can keep your monocle on unless you're squinting the entire time?
Well, maybe it's super glued on.
Maybe it is.
All right.
But that was cool.
Hey, Sean, what'd you play this week?
So I got to play Farmageddon from Grant Rodiak and Hyperbole Games. And this, I think, had just been fulfilling from Kickstarter. And I think this is the second edition of the game. I feel like I've seen that somewhere. This is kind of I don't want to say a set collection. It's not set collection, but it's a little bit of a take that game. You are drawing some cards where some of them are your plant cards and your fertilizer cards. They're the same. And then you're drawing some farmer cards, and you're going to take some of these plants and you're going to plant them, and then you're going to use the fertilizer cards. They have a certain number, and if you can fulfill that fertilization requirement, you then get to score them. You're going to play some farmer cards. They're going to let you uproot other people's crops, steal things, add value, take away value. kind of a crazy little random game, but it was fun. It was enjoyable. It was fairly quick. I think it would be better the more familiar you are with the cards, because there was a little bit of time, just downtime, people reading the different cards. But the best part about this, I think, is the art. It is these anthropomorphic vegetables and farmers and fertilizer and all this other stuff. And it just looks really cool. It was just a kind of a fun, silly game. Took us about, I'd say 20 minutes. The scores, however, were like 15, 15, 15, and then Max had like 100,000. Not really 100,000, but he had like 40 or 50.
A lot to a little.
Yeah. And I don't think that was an issue with the game. I think that was Max just being a jerk, but not really. So, yeah, it was pretty cool. Farmageddon, fantastic art. Go check that out from Hyperbole Games.
Speaking of art, I played a little game called Junk Art.
Excellent segue, Alex.
Now, before getting into Junk Art itself, I think it's worth talking about Mock's Boarding House in Seattle.
Okay.
This place is unreal, as I've said for the second time this episode. Unreal. So you could fit, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 empires in the space that this place has.
Okay.
It's got a huge footprint. This is out in Bellevue, Washington. A suburb of Seattle, though kind of a city in its own right, really. The retail area, Sean, I showed you a panorama of the retail area alone of this.
You put it on the Twitter feed, too. Or I retweeted it on the Twitter feed.
Well, good job.
Yeah.
Good job doing that. They were having their Labor Day sale, so of course I had to buy some games despite having very limited luggage space. Ended up picking up Mord Imarosa, which is a sound-based game with a tower that I'm excited to try, but it was $9.
Okay.
75% off. Anyway, so you have that main area. You have, if you go further back, you have a miniatures area, fully done out miniatures areas, totally separate. Go further back, you have a tournament play space. You go kind of to the right from there, you have a Magic the Gathering area with its own staffed booth.
Yeah.
And all the cards, so that's all off separate. There's actually a Magic card chandelier.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Made up of rare lands, which I guess each of them is worth $15 a card or something like that.
Okay.
There is a secret speakeasy room tucked in there that you can rent out. There's also an apothecary that you can rent out and a library space. So they have these private play spaces that you can rent out.
Do you get high in the apothecary?
No, but they have the kind of the bottles not out for you to use, but they're kind of tucked in.
Did you get some like oxycodone or something?
No, they're not real pills. Okay. Anyway. And then beyond all that, kind of up towards the front, right next to the retail area, is a lovely restaurant, wonderful restaurant, really full service, big menu restaurant. You know, you have burgers and you have a dinner menu and a lunch menu. Very cool to see this store. I can understand why folks like Mike Fitzgerald and Suzanne have said the best gaming store out there.
Sure,
I'd be hard pressed to find a better one.
Yeah.
It is incredible. And if you are a gamer and you're in the Seattle area at any point, you need to go check it out. You need to go check this place out. Sean, you need to go check this place out.
All right.
You would spend literally a whole day there.
Probably.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a difficult task.
No, it probably is.
Yeah.
But it was fantastic. So anyway, we had a booth there, and we ordered some food and played Junk Art. This is a Pretzel Games release. It's designed by Jay Cormier and Seng-Fu Lim, who also did Belfort. And I think they've done a couple of others. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. They did Akrotiri. They got a whole bevy of games under the belts.
So this one is put out by Pretzel Games, as I mentioned. It has 4 different colors of differently shaped blocks. What's interesting about it is it's sort of a do-your-own stacking game. And what I mean by that is there are, I believe, 12 different games in the box, different mini-games. You play with 3 random ones each game. And they use these blocks and these different bases with different mechanics. So, for instance, the first one we played was a game where you had a hand of cards. You would hand the person to your left a card. They would have to add that card to the tower. And then so on and so forth. And you'd keep going until 5 pieces were knocked off. Once 5 pieces were knocked off, the round ended. Whoever didn't knock off 5 pieces, they got 3 points. All right, that was one of the games. There's another game where you have your own base, your own tower that you're building. And let's say I have 4 cards in hand. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose 2 of those cards. I'm going to hand those 2 cards to the person on my left. They're going to choose one for them to build and one for me to build of the 2 that I gave them. And ultimately you get points for how tall your tower is, whether color and shape matched. And there are a bunch of these great little mini games built into this. It's a really good dexterity game, Sean. Really good. I actually eyed buying this one. I was limited by A, luggage space, and B, price point. Not that the price point is unfair. Watchdog Alex is not barking on this one. It was $70 at Mox.
That's the MSRP.
But they're thick, chunky blocks. I mean, this is the high quality components. And really a lot of game in there. The fact that you have as much variety as you do with the 12-player thing, the 12 different games, it's easy enough to teach, and it worked really well. I had a ton of fun with Junk Art. A lot of fun. And I may look to pick this up at some point down the road now that I'm back home in New Mexico. I think this is one that you'll actually really like, Sean,
Okay.
because of the variety in there. And it might be one of those where there's certain game modes that you wouldn't even put in the deck as a selector, but really cool. A lot of fun with junk art.
Very cool. Yeah, Rory has a copy on the shelf over at Empire.
Oh, good.
And I'm actually was telling him to break it down and put it in the library.
Is that right?
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe
I might end up buying it. I don't know.
Maybe you can beat him to it.
Yeah.
So Alex, have you heard of a game called Through the Ages?
I have.
Apparently, the other week it went up to number 2 on Board Game Geek, although it's since been bypassed by Twilight Struggle. Apparently, the Twilight Struggle people saw that it was number 2 and said no, and they fixed that.
There's a struggle over the second spot?
Yep, sure is.
Oh, boy.
So I have, in my collection, I have the last edition, which I'd only played the basic game once, and it was kind of difficult. I've played the basic game, I've played the last edition online on Board Game Arena several times. And I've also played the new edition online at boardgamingonline.net, I think, a good 15 times. In fact, I'm playing a 2-player game with Matthew right now. And I had yet to play the new edition from CGE, and then it's also released here in the US, distributed by Eagle Griffin Games. But I get to play it. So last weekend, Raquel and I, on our date night, which is usually Friday nights, but we had to move it to Saturday for, I forget why, we got to Empire around 9 o'clock, and we pulled out Through the Ages, and she and I went through the basic game just so she can kind of get a feel for it. And it was fantastic. It is so good. I knew mechanically I love this game, but the new art of the cards, the way that they've streamlined things, everything about this game is just fantastic. And then at Dukes of Dice game night on Wednesday night, we accidentally played a 3-player game, Matthew, Matt, and I. When I say accidentally, I mean I had it in my hand and I fell, and as I fell, it spilled on the table and magically set itself up, and we started playing.
Huh.
Yeah. The idea was Matthew and I were going to get there early at 4:30 and then play a quick 2-player game, and that we got there late, and then Matt showed up, and anyway, it's just fantastic. So if you don't know, this is a streamlined, quote-unquote, civilization building game where you are going to be building up your civilization from antiquity to age 3, which is kind of modern times. And you're doing this by doing a couple different civil actions on your turn, some military actions. You're building up your infrastructure through farming and mining. You're creating workers who are going to go work in your temples and your sports arenas and all these different things to give you happiness, to give you culture points, which are your victory points. You're drafting cards from this center row that are also kind of spilling out. It's really good. I think that you would potentially like this 2 players only. I don't think you'd like this at 3 or 4. And you'd want to do the base game first, although I don't think that it's the same kind of difference between base game of say, Arkwright to the full game of Arkwright. I think that there's a good, interesting enough game here in the basic game of Through the Ages that I think you might be interested in. You might be interested in the engine building. You might be interested in the story that you're telling as you're kind of creating your civilization. It's fantastic. I'm really excited that I got to get 2 games of this in real life in the last week. And I'm looking for some more opportunities to play because it's a really fantastic game. And it's by Vlado Chvátil, one of your favorite designers. So I think it's worth looking at, although you may not be crazy about it in the end.
I'll put it this way. Just because I like a designer's games doesn't mean I like all of their games.
Sure.
Especially if the weight is cranked up a little high.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see. All right, I got in a play of Lotus from Renegade Games. And this is, so keep in mind, we're playing with Jillian when we're at Mock's boarding house, meaning we want to keep this thing relatively easy to learn, lighter side. Lotus is a game where you have a bunch of petal cards in hand, and you are building flowers of 3 petals total, 4 petals total, 5, 6, or 7 petals total. And you are looking to be the one person who plays the last petal on a flower to complete it. If you do that, you get all of the petals in the flower, and those are points. But if you have the majority of these little squares, these icons, kind of control of the flower, you'll also get some benefit too, whether or not you were the last one to finish off that flower or not. So you might unlock special abilities, letting you play more petals, or have a larger hand size, or have an extra guy that gives you better control over things. You're exchanging petals over the course of the game, and it's a kind of a maneuvering, hand management, playing petals out kind of game. I don't know if I'm explaining in a way that makes sense. The art of this is really interesting because the cards line up, and if you line them up properly, hey, they form an actual flower by the time it's all said and done.
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful looking game.
Beautiful.
It is. Have you seen this one, Sean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is really cool and simple enough to learn, but with enough depth there. I might pick this one up myself as well. So Suzanne was definitely Definitely started off 2 for 2, showing us a couple of games. That's Lotus from Renegade Games. Give it a check. Sean, back to you.
All right, so the last game that I'm going to talk about is Cuba Libre. This is one of the coin series games from GMT. And I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I had played the solo run-through. So there's a little booklet that they give you in addition to the rule booklet that kind of runs you through an example of the first, quarter of a game or so. And that's kind of designed to teach you and give you a feel for it. And so now I decided, well, I need to play the true solo game where you have just yourself and then the 3 bots. So this is, like I said, coin game, which stands for counterinsurgency. I was playing Castro's forces, the 26th July forces. And you also have the government forces, you have the mob, and you have the student revolutionary forces, the Directorio. And I'm a little bit disheartened right now, Alex, because I had a really difficult time. I have yet to finish this game. It's kind of on hold. I'm not quite halfway through, and I was having a really difficult time running through the flow chart of what each of the bots do when it's their turn. And it was a little disheartening because I'm not used to like struggling with rules, and I felt like I was really struggling with this. I felt like I was having a really difficult time trying to figure out what to do. And I was very intent on saying, okay, I'm not trying to figure out how to play in a strong strategic way. I'm not trying to do the optimal play. I'm just trying to get a feel for the flow of the game, because eventually I want to teach this to others, not you. Don't worry. Don't freak out. Not you, but to others.
I wasn't freaking out.
I'm just making sure. And so I want to make sure I have the flow of the game down. And in some ways, I'm worried that the way the bots go through their flow chart is going to impede that somehow. And it was just very disheartening, and not disheartening to the point where I'm, throwing my hands up in the air and I'm done with the game. I think it's a great game and I'm really excited to really get into this, but it was just kind of a hurdle that I'm just not used to experiencing. Even with some heavier games like Food Chain Magnate and Arkwright, this was a little troubling to me. And, so I'm going to keep pushing through, because I think that there's a lot of great stuff there. Plus I do have 2 other coin games. I have Falling Skies, The Fall of Rome and Gaul, and then Liberty or Death, which is the American Revolution. So I'm very interested in learning the series and mastering the series, at least rules wise. So yeah, a little disheartening, but I'm gonna press on, Alex, because I persevere. It's what I do.
Strength, wisdom, fortitude.
Is that a thing from something?
No, it isn't. I just made it up.
And also, Raquel's downloading World of Warcraft currently.
Oh,
yeah, because the new expansion just came out.
Has she played before ever?
She has not. Well, she started to on her old computer. We just got her new computer about 3 weeks ago. It's a really nice laptop, and it's actually nicer than mine. And I'm gonna steal it from her at some point. So yeah, she wants to play. We're gonna give it a shot. So
very nice.
That's my gaming experience this week, Alex.
All right, I'm gonna wrap mine up with a game called Anomia. I think that's in there.
No. Anomia.
Do.
No.
Phenomena. Do. All right, enough of that. So this is a card game meant to be a party game where you are basically flipping up cards one at a time in front of people. And whenever 2 symbols on the cards match up, you're going to be looking at the other person's card, which has a category of some kind. It's not as broad as something like name a food, but it's a little narrower, like name a kitchen appliance or name a serial killer or something like that. And if you name the card that's in front of your opponent before they name your card, you grab that card. Now, in doing so, you might uncover another symbol that matches up with someone else's, and then you have to keep doing that until the chain ends, and then you keep flipping up cards and do that. Whoever has the most cards at the end of all of that ends up winning. Really simple game. Really fun party game, though. Enjoyed this one a good amount. And what's interesting to me about it is it's named after the sensation of having something on the tip of your tongue and not being able to quite get the word out. And that's what this game invokes. It's what the game gives you, because you're like, serial killer, and then you can't do it.
That's also the sound that you make when the serial killer is strangling you.
This is true. Accurate point. So had a good amount of fun with this one, and we just played a quick round of it. Would have loved to play more, but yeah, those are the 3 new games I got in.
Just to clarify, it is Anomia.
Ah, yes.
And if you're going to look for it, it's spelled Anomia.
Not with an extra N, which I wrote in the show notes and said. So Anomia.
Nomia.
Anomia. You Anomia me, Sean. All right.
That's weird.
That's a look at what we played this week. Let's head on over to the news. Is it hot in this basement, or is it just me?
I see what you're doing here. Go on.
Anyway, in non-Anomia related news, Sean.
Yep, that's me.
My brain is not working today.
Nope, sure isn't.
The Jogo de Ano got named the winner of that prestigious award. It's from Spiel, Portugal, and they were...
For the record...
I can't speak.
And also for the record, you put Jogo de Amo in the show notes.
Well, I said it properly out loud, and that's all that counts.
Yes.
Your 5 nominees this year were Grand Austria Hotel, Lignum, Voyages of Marco Polo, Tricarion, and your winner, oh my goodness, Alexander Pfister is on fire, Mombasa won.
Wouldn't it be better if you said, oh my goods?
That would have, yep. Not making connections today well either.
Apparently not.
Oh my goodsness.
Yeah, this is kind of the heavier weight games. These are kind of the awards that I look to because there's some really good ones here. Big fan of Grand Austria Hotel, Voyages Marco Polo, and of course Mombasa, which I still have yet to play my copy, although I have played the game. And same thing with the Vlada Chevadel. You know, as much as you love Alexander Pfister, this might be too heavy for you. I don't know. I think it's fantastic. I think Mombasa's excellent. And I think it's a very deserving win. And this is now the Jogo de Ano that he won, and he's got back-to-back Kennerspiels for Broom Service and for
Isle of Skye.
And for Isle of Skye. There you go.
You had a case of anomia there, Sean.
I sure did. So I think what you were going for before, which you forgot to follow up with, was Alexander Pfister is hot, and that's why it's hot in the basement. Was that what you were going for?
No, it wasn't.
Oh.
No, not at all. It actually is literally hot in this basement right now.
Okay.
I think it might be because I'm wearing both a t-shirt and a USC jersey.
Well, because in our Facebook chat this week, when Matthew's like, oh, Mombasa won, you said, oh, Pfister's on fire. So I thought you were just carrying that over.
Yeah, I did indeed say that.
Yep.
But nope, that's not the connection I was making. I was literally commenting on how hot it was in the basement.
So... Not
clever. If you're going to assume that something I'm saying today is clever, don't assume it.
Okay, check. So congrats to Alexander Pfister. Great honor and great track record. I mean, that's pretty amazing. So, and I know he's mentioned that he's listened to us on occasion. So congrats to you. Well deserved, sir.
Yes, indeed. All right. Finalists for another award, the 2016 International Gamers Awards, were announced. All right, so these are games that had to be released between July 1st of last year and June 30th of this year. So you have kind of an interesting straddling of years.
Right, because when I first saw this list, I was a little confused. I'm like, why is that on the list when it should have been the last year? But given that range of dates, it makes sense.
So here are your multiplayer nominees. You have Blood Rage, Codenames, Food Chain Magnate, Grand Austria Hotel, Isle of Skye, Mombasa, Nippon, Pandemic Legacy, Quadropolis, and Time Stories. That's an interesting mix of a list there.
It really is. And it's a really good list. You know, of all of those games, I think Time Stories is the one that I have the least experience with because we never really finished the first one, the Asylum. But those are all incredibly solid games. And I think any one of them winning, with maybe one exception, Quadropolis, which I'm not crazy about, but I understand why it's so popular and why it's nominated on this list. If you were to pick a winner, and it's kind of weird because you've got Codenames and then you've got Food Chain Magnate, which are just very opposite ends, different styles of game. I mean, everything. If you were to pick one on here, Alex, what would you give it to?
Not to punt on this, but who is voting on this award?
I believe it's an international panel.
Of international people?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's one guy from Canada and a bunch of guys from the US.
I don't know that, but it's fairly spread out. They do have on their website, there is a list of all of the different panelists.
But it's an expert panel.
Yeah, like I know Joel Eddy was just added from Drive Thru Review, and Greg Schlosser. I don't know if Greg Schlosser started this, but I know he's involved. He messaged us last year when the winners were announced. So it's an expert panel.
Okay. Oof. Pandemic Legacy has... Pandemic Legacy would probably be the one I would go to. But Codenames had surprising strength at the Dice Tower Awards. It's tough to tell. And the thing that gives me worry is Isle of Skye, obviously winning the Kennerspiel. There's some amount of expert praise for that one that I think could play into this. I would ultimately say Pandemic Legacy is the safe bet.
I think so. Although, if it were me picking, I mean, of those, Pandemic Legacy is a 6 for me. But I'd consider Food Chain Magnate, even though it's only a 5. I definitely consider Mombasa. I haven't quite decided where I settle. But Mombasa's either a 5 or 6 for me. It's a fantastic game. And all of those other games are, Codenames is a 6, Blood Rage is a 5, Nippon is a 5, Isle of Skye is a 5. I mean, that's just an incredible list. What about the 2-player list, Alex?
So on the 2-player list, we have Seven Wonders Duel, Patchwork, yeah, Raptor, yeah, Star Wars Rebellion, and Trombone,
Yeah.
Yeah, little sound effects after each one based on my knowledge of any of those games. You liked Raptor when you tried it out, but I don't think that would be your prediction for this.
Well, I don't know. And by the way, if you go check out our buddy Dan King, the Game Boy Geek, he has a preview for Pantheon, the Seven Wonders Duel expansion, which I watched the other night, and it looks fantastic. Fantastic.
Sure.
Anyway,
yeah, go check that out.
Yeah, it's really
that's
cool.
the kind of thing you're into.
Yeah, good games and whatnot.
Yeah.
If I were to guess where this winds up, I'm going to say Patchwork with maybe Seven Wonders Duel. If I were to pick for me, the problem is haven't played Star Wars Rebellion, haven't played Trombone. I've got Star Wars Rebellion upstairs. I've got the insert made. I need to pull this game out and play it, Alex. But with what I have there, I would probably pick Patchwork.
Of that list with the panel, as much as it pains me to say it, I think Seven Wonders Duel has a pretty good crack at this one.
Yeah, probably.
So and I love Patchwork. Patchwork's my favorite game on that list. But I think Seven Wonders Duel probably is who ends up winning it.
Okay.
So, yeah, there you go.
Well, it'll be interesting to see then how the International Gamers Awards pan out in a little bit of time, a couple months.
All right, and finally on Kickstarter, we're talking about Tiki Island from Great White Games, spelled WIGHT Games. Yes. 2 to 6 player game, plays in about 30 to 60 minutes. Sean, what's Tiki Island all about?
So they're billing this as a family weight game, and this is Great White Games' first Kickstarter. This is, it plays up to 6, and you are trying to get your 3 different villagers across the map. It's this big hex map with smaller hexes on it, and you're trying to get them across. There's some interesting card play with some special abilities. This was kind of an odd Kickstarter, though. So there was just one thing on the Kickstarter that kind of threw me for a loop. There's a quote that says, "For those of you unfamiliar with dice, welcome to the gaming world."
Huh.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. Now, is this a family-friendly game? And when they say family-friendly, they're not necessarily meaning like you'd play this with your parents or whatever. They're saying like kids. There's a lot on the page that talks about how they want to bridge the gap between hardcore gamers and younger-ish kids. So like, for example, there's this one card that says, if a hostile islander enters a hex adjacent to a friendly, unstunned islander, you may roll a die. And then you consult the die and you consult the chart. Does that sound family-friendly?
Depends on how family-friendly the chart is.
Well, just
you're talking about the hostile thing.
A hostile islander enters an adjacent hex to a friendly, unstunned islander, and there's a lot of different cards like that. Sounds interesting, and it sounds enjoyable. The art is fantastic. It's this cutesy little like Pacific Islander art with like these big tiki heads, and it looks really cool. And the gameplay seems decent. I question whether it's truly family friendly, and maybe that's not fair not having played the game, but just hearing some of the complexity of some of the cards that are on the Kickstarter page, it's kind of interesting. The other odd thing about this is, from what I can tell, there were 3 different early bird pledge levels. So if you were super early, you could get it for $25. If you were not quite so early, you can get it for $30, and then $35, and then the regular price for everyone is $40.
Huh.
That's a little off-putting to me. Knowing that I could have gotten it for $25, like I probably would have backed this for $25. But for $40, I'm not sure. And I don't know, that kind of bugs me. It makes me certainly less interested in backing this game. Although it looks really interesting. I mean, I'd encourage people to go look at it. It's right now at $4,000 of its $15,000 goal. So, it's got some work to do. It ends September 29th. So it just, as the time of recording, kind of just started here on Kickstarter. But it may struggle to get there. But just kind of some odd Kickstarter habits that I haven't quite seen elsewhere that I thought was interesting to kind of bring up.
Is this the only Kickstarter project or the first Kickstarter project from this company?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe not super surprising, but Jamie might have a word or two with them.
Jamie Segmeyer, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That is Tiki Island. Give it a look if you want to. If not, that's fine. And that's a look at the news.
Hey everybody, this is Sean, and I just want to take a quick second to tell you about Meeple Realty's latest insert for Trickerion from Ape Games. Meeple Realty's Trickerion Theater is the official insert for the great game Trickerion, which is about performing tricks, although I prefer the word illusions. It features individual player trays, card trays for all the cards you need during the game and for setup, a unique mechanical resource tray, and a book tray that will hold the player aid and specialist board. You should head on over to meeplerealty.com to look at how amazing this insert is, and in fact, take a look at some of their other great inserts for some of your favorite games. Meeple Realty brings some of their amazing expertise and fine craftsmanship to bring you high-quality, innovative inserts engineered to improve your play experience and speed up setup and breakdown of some of your favorite games.
Meeple Realty, think inside the box. All right, this week we're taking a break from the reviews in favor of a top 6 list. This week we're looking at high player count games, games that play best with 7 or more.
All right, so Alex, this was your idea, a list of 7+ games. What was the thought behind this?
So I'm not going to take total credit for this.
Okay.
So on a guild thread a long while ago, someone was asking about high player count games. I don't remember the thread. I didn't look it up and add it to the show notes because, as I'm about to mention in extensive detail, I didn't have as much to do with the show notes this week as I normally would.
Yeah.
Normally I do the vast majority of the show notes and we'll fill in here and there with plays and other things. It's sort of my contribution in exchange for Sean doing, 90% of the work.
Okay.
Yes. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, I was traveling this week, and on my phone, it's tough to really do the show notes in a way that is efficient at all. So, I didn't look up the thread. I intended to. Oh well. And my list, by the way, is not going to be an actual top 6 list, but it's going to be one of my infamous list of 6.
Coming in at the hexagon level.
Yes. At the pentagon level, we have... So... I picked out 6 games in no particular order. I guess the inspiration, to some degree, it came from this thread, who I don't remember who did it or what they said exactly, but it was along the lines of, hey, I have to host a lot of these gaming events. I tend to have larger groups when I play. And I know Cameron's mentioned this issue too, where he's had higher player counts for when he's playing separately outside of Dukes of Dice game nights or something like that. What are some games that might make sense, or what are some games that you might recommend? And so we got to it a few months down the line, so... That's kind of a lesson if you post to the guild. Sometimes we'll turn it into stuff. In fact, frequently we'll turn it into stuff. So yeah, top 6, 7+ player games. Because we talked about this one in terms of what's a player count that isn't frequently accommodated by games.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one. You definitely see obviously plenty of 4-player games, 2-player games, 3, 5, 6, even 6 even with expansions in some cases. 7, you're getting up there and it's on the rarer side for sure. As I think we saw reflected on the guild with a lot of overlap between people's picks.
Right. I would say that when everyone provided their list, 90% of the games were the same 8 titles.
Yeah.
Which kind of says a lot, I think. Before we go into our list, though, I just want to read a couple things from the guild, just kind of to frame the discussion here. Mr. Punter said, been hosting monthly game nights for my less gamery friends. Turnout can be between a handful or up to 20. They all then show up and look to me to control the night and game choice. This can be a tad stressful. I've attempted to split folks into smaller groups, but the general consensus always tries to push back to everyone playing one thing. Scott Sexton said, higher count games are very group dependent. What works well for some larger groups won't work well for others. And depending on just how large your group is, even some games may not work well because you just don't have enough folks, like Werewolf and 2 Rooms. Honestly, if I'm with a group of 7+ players, I'd rather get in 2 smaller games with more meat on their bones. And then finally, Christopher John said, to me, it seems pretty obvious what to do when you have 6 or more players. Divide the group up into 2 separate games. I'm afraid the rest of my group disagrees with me, however, and we inevitably end up playing at least one game together. So I think sometimes there is a desire to, when you've got this big group, hey, let's, we're all together, let's enjoy it, let's be together, let's do this one thing. And it is difficult, I feel like, to kind of break up into smaller groups. And we've done that from time to time, and there's always a little bit of pushback, whether it's explicit or just kind of, implicit. But anyway, let's get into the list, Alex.
Number 6.
All right, 6 is the number of players that we're not talking about this week. We're talking about more than that because I don't have a ranked list. All right, my number 6 on my list of 6, but isn't actually ranked that way, is Resistance from Resistance Avalon. Sean, this is one of your favorites of all time, a top 10 game for you. And I think when you have the right group for this one, when everyone's in the spirit of it, it's a fantastic game. Now, with the caveat that this can be easily ruined by 1 or 2 players screwing things up. If someone doesn't listen to the very simple rules and they're on the good team, the non-spies, and they play a fail card, it's going to throw a big old wrench into everything. Huge wrench. If someone is just in the mindset of, hey, let's just vote, whatever, who cares? It doesn't matter. We don't have any information anyway. You're missing the point, and it's going to ruin the game. That being said, it accommodates these player counts better, and in fact works. The more players you get, almost the better it works in some ways.
So what's your preferred player count then for this?
I think somewhere in the 8 or 9 range is probably best. I don't know if I'd go max out of 10, right, is where it goes to. I don't know if I'd like it that much. I think anywhere from that 7 to 9 range is just fine, though. Works pretty well. I think 6 doesn't work as well, and 5 really doesn't work as well. I think you got to have 7 or more, and I think that's why... the games I'm putting on this list, for instance, and I'll talk about really quickly, this is as good a time as any, 2 games that are not on this list, for me, are... So Happy Salmon is not on this list because it's a 6-player game in that box by itself.
Right.
It would play really well with more than that, but you have to buy 2 copies of the game.
Yeah.
So I didn't put it on there for that reason. Mysterium, one of my top 10 games of all time, accommodates 7 players, but I actually don't think that's my preferred player count. I'd rather have fewer players if I'm playing that game. And so games I'm looking at are games that really handle 7+ best.
Sure.
And so that's where I come down on that one.
Well, I won't say anything about that choice right now.
Yes, I can understand why.
All right.
Because it's probably higher up on your list.
Oh, who knows?
Who knows?
So my number 6 might raise an eyebrow or two, and it's Diplomacy, a game that plays 2 to 7, although realistically you want 7 players. And this game came out in the 50s, and it's ruined friends. It's probably ruined marriages, and it works me up so much. So this is a game where it's kind of area control. It's pre-World War I, and you play the different European countries. You play England and France, Germany, Italy, Austria-Hungary, Turkey, and Russia. And there's a very simple simultaneous movement where you write down where all of your pieces are going. They're moving from here to here. They're supporting this movement here. They're being convoyed, whatever. And then you reveal them all at the same time, and you do whatever resolution you need. But that's not really the game. The game is the negotiations between the players, which take up the bulk of the time of the game, where I'm going to go walk over to Russia. Maybe I'm Turkey, and I'm going to say, hey, this region here in the Balkans, I'm going to grab this, you grab this, and maybe we'll have a non-aggression pact, or maybe we'll be allies and we'll take out Austria-Hungary together. And then I go over to Austria-Hungary and I say, hey, here's what Russia's planning, and I'm ready to help you. So you can have this territory, I'll have this territory. It's fantastic. And then inevitably, you get stabbed in the back, or you stab someone else in the back. They flick a lit cigarette in your face, and, that's diplomacy.
And that's how it goes.
However, here's the thing, though. Here's what I would love to do. I would love to play 14-player diplomacy, or more, maybe 21-player diplomacy. We're talking about a high-count game where you have a team. You have 2 or 3 people on a team, so that you can be carrying out all of these different negotiations at once. So it's kind of like you have ambassadors. And then on your team, maybe one person's actually making the final decision, or you're voting or whatever. And I think that would be really cool. That'd be a really cool way to play, where it kind of has this League of Nations feel to it. Yeah, it sounds really cool. But just be careful with this game. Be careful who you play with. There's a reason that this gets played online rather than in person, because you can get shanked playing this game. So just be careful. So that's my number 6, Diplomacy.
Number 5.
My number 5 is some combination of werewolf, ultimate werewolf, mafia, whatever you want to call it. This is a game that I've played with a deck of cards, which is a standard deck of cards. And I said, if you're the jack, you're a werewolf. Or if you're the queen, you're the nurse, or whatever, when you're playing mafia. And so there's also the ultimate werewolf that Bezier game puts out. This is not One Night Ultimate Werewolf, but this is the full one that has player elimination, which is problematic.
Yes.
But this plays incredibly high counts. I think the biggest game I've ever played of this is probably in like the 25-ish range. And I know there have been gigantic games of this. And it's kind of fun to watch. Even when you're out, there's a spectacle to it. There's so basically the idea is, if you don't know anything about this, there are several people on a team who are either the mafia or they're the werewolf, depending which version of the game you're playing. And there are others who are the villagers. There are cops who can, or I'm blending the different genres. But basically there's a group of people, either cops or hunters, that can take out the werewolves, and everyone's going to close their eyes. And then there's a moderator who has to run the game. That's kind of the other downside to it. They're going to say, okay, I need all the werewolves or all the mafia to wake up. And they all look at each other. and then they decide on someone that they're going to kill. And then they close their eyes, and then maybe the cops or the hunters or whatever you want to call them, they wake up and they get to ask the moderator about one person. Are they a werewolf? The moderator tells them or not. And there's some other roles you can throw in that have different effects. And then ultimately everyone opens their eyes. The moderator says, this person is now dead. They're out of the game, can't say anything. And then people start throwing accusations. Maybe the cop knows who one of the werewolves are, but doesn't want to necessarily call to attention that they absolutely know. It's a lot of fun, but the player interaction is problematic. It's worth playing this game. And I think it handles such high play counts really well. And it can go pretty quick. It can go in like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. It can last several hours, but I think it's worthwhile trying. I'm sure we'll talk about a one-night version of this, but there is some value in playing this game.
To me, the player elimination is so brutal with this one because it's not just that you're eliminated, it's that you're eliminated and you're waiting a long time.
Yeah.
And once you get past so that's what happened to me? Oh, that's who the werewolf was? And you see that? There's not much reason to stick around.
Yeah, and so you're not necessarily playing this at like a game night. I mean, some people probably do, but it's more of, it gets played at cons a lot. We used to play it in like party situations before we were doing a bunch of gaming or whatever. So it's fun, but it certainly has its problems. And I think that, a game like Resistance might have a similar feel, but without that elimination. But it's still so ubiquitous and it's so prevalent and it's inspired so much that I feel like it needs to be mentioned. So that's Werewolf or Mafia.
All right. There are 5 camels in Camel Up, so why not? That'll be the one on the 5th spot for some reason. 5 differently colored camels. So Camel Up is my choice on this list. It can play at lower player counts, but I think it accommodates the 7 and up really well. I think it plays up to 8 with the base. With the expansions, it can play up to, I think, 10?
10, yep.
Yeah. So it handles it really well because the turns are so quick. You're making one decision. Am I making a bet here? Am I rolling this dice? Am I doing this? All right, next person's turn. You can't have these higher player count games with, you either have to have things selected simultaneously or you have to have short turns. And it accomplishes that well. There's a great table feel of kind of standing around and is this white camel that needs to move so that I win my bet going to roll next? And is it going to roll the right amount or not? There's a lot of tension with this one and a lot of fun around a table. It doesn't take too long to play. It looks great on a table and it accommodates groups well. It's easy enough to teach. I've taught it at Empire several times to random folk who aren't even really there for gaming, for part of our game group, I should say.
Okay.
They're the game. I didn't just like grab them off the street like, hey, get in here.
I'll come into this game shop, but I'll be damned if I'm going to play a game.
That's right, and certainly not a camel racing one. Oh my, this is delightful. Yeah. So Camel Up, does a really great job of accommodating that player count well. And I think for that reason, because there isn't a lot of downtime, because there's interest in what other people are doing on their turns, it works really well. So that is my 5, but not 5th ranked.
Number 4.
All right, 4 players are on a team in Captain Sonar, so we'll go with that one up next. And this is one that we've just started playing recently. This one plays up to 8 at max. You can play with fewer. I guess you could play a 4-player game of this where you'd have 2 on each side, but I don't think that would work too well.
You could play 2-player. You can play 1-on-1.
Sure.
But then it's turn-based.
Yeah,
not real time.
I'm not a fan. I mean, it might be great. So this is Battleship. This is Gamer's Battleship in a way. Not because it has mechanics. It has some mechanics that are somewhat similar, but because you actually feel like you're out maneuvering your ship against the opponent's sub. It's a lot of fun. Basically, 4 players are managing a sub. Each of them has a different role. You have a captain, you have a first mate, you have an engineer, and you have a radio operator. And you are trying to steer your sub around, prep systems. If you're the engineer, trying to keep everything working. If you're the radio operator, trying to spy on the other team and see what they are up to. It's a lot of fun. It works really well at that player count because it isn't as super stressful as something like, say, Space Cadet's Dice Tool. It has this great team feel, this great almost team building feel where, the captain's running the show but has to really listen to other people. And everyone on that team needs to be working well for the thing to go. And I think that it works really well as a game. So, Captain Sonar.
I'm just going to correct you right now, though.
Yes.
Technically, submarines are boats, not ships. But, Anyway, my number 4 is Telestrations. Telestrations is a combination of Pictionary and the telephone game. So you'll get a clue, and everyone's doing this simultaneously, which is fantastic. And you all have your little whiteboard booklet, and there's multiple pages of it, and you have a dry erase marker. And so your clue might be, Ladybug. So you draw your ladybug, you close your booklet, you pass it to the left. As you're passing to the left, someone from the right is giving you their booklet. You open up to the picture that you're given and you look at it and you write down on the next page what you think they were trying to draw. Then you close that and you pass it and you get something from the person on your right. And now it's a new word. You draw that new word and you keep doing this until your booklet gets back to you. And there's scoring to it. And every time we've talked about this game on the show, we've been like, don't score this game. Just play it. It's a fun experience. It's more experience than a game, but it's a ton of fun. And you go through and you look at where Ladybug wound up being Supernova or something, I don't know, something crazy like that. I remember one time Raquel had license plate and it turned into Tank. Pillow turned into the Macarena somehow. And so, yeah, it's just tremendous fun. Now, to do this at high player counts, because I think the base game only has 6 booklets, but the 12-player party pack lets you play, 12 players. So great game. Everyone's engaged. Everyone's doing stuff simultaneously. I've played this at the full count when I was working at my last office and we had kind of our game lunch or we did our team building stuff. We played this with the full group and it's just a lot of fun. So that is Telestrations with the 12-player party pack.
Number 3.
Hey, remember when I said we might be talking about a one-night version of Werewolf at some point? Well, here it is, One Night Revolution. Not One Night Werewolf. So I prefer One Night Revolution. Now there's One Night Ultimate Werewolf, there's One Night Ultimate Werewolf Daybreak, One Night Ultimate Vampire, and I think they're coming out with One Night Ultimate Aliens.
That's correct.
Yeah. So this is the one that's based on the Resistance universe, that dystopian future. This was designed by Ted Alspach, but unlike the other One Nights that came out from Bezier Games, this came out from Indie Board and Cards. And what I like about this that it does is it separates the roles from the identity of whether or not you're a villager or you're a werewolf, for example. So here you're either a loyalist or you're a spy, but then you have your different special ability handed out with a different thing from the card. Now, these are quick. These last maybe 10 minutes at most. There is a phase where everyone closes their eyes, and what's nice is you don't need an app. So the One Night Werewolf versions, you need an app, and that Eric Sommer does a fantastic job of. However, everyone does something in One Night Revolution. So you just go around in the circle and you say done. You do whatever you're supposed to do, and you say done. So everyone's doing something, and then you stop, you end that, and everyone makes blind accusations, or they have seen certain cards or certain abilities, or they know that somebody did this or that, and you try and figure out who are the spies. It is a ton of fun, and it does 10 really well. I've played it at 8, 9, 10, and it does these high player counts well. And what I like this about some of the other One Nights is that everybody's doing something, and you don't need the app, because you just kind of go around and do that. So really cool. One Night Revolution. Check it out.
And I will throw in a plug here in my 3 spot, not actually ranked number 3, for One Night Ultimate Werewolf, because I've had a ton of fun with One Night Ultimate Werewolf.
Yeah.
The app works really well with this, and this is another one where it's sort of this mad tea party of things getting shuffled around and blind accusations and interesting roles. I loved when I saw this idea of the Tanner, that the Tanner wants to be the one accused and wants to be the one killed. It adds such an interesting wrinkle to the game. And there's so many of these different expansions you can play with, more significant rules, with easier to learn rules. It just depends on how experienced the players are. I like how well the app manages things, and I really enjoy the Eric Sommer voiced app on there. Like it works really well for this game and drives it. So I like that One Night Ultimate experience more than I like, say, the typical werewolf mafia thing, which we hashed out earlier. So that would be my number 3 pick on my list, One Night Ultimate Werewolf.
Number 2.
All right. There are 2 rooms in this game, so why not have this one in the 2 spot? 2 rooms and a boom. And I'll let Sean talk about this one more, because guess what? It's also Sean's number 2.
Yep, that's my number 2. So this is done by Tuesday Night Games, and it plays 6 to 30. And you know what? It plays 30 really well.
Yes.
I'm not sure. I don't recall exactly how many people we played with, but it was approaching 30.
It was up in that range for sure.
And so this was at Dice Tower Commons the first time I played it. It was before I got my Kickstarter copy. Dan King had an advanced copy, but then I've also played it since. I had a work party that I took it to, had a ton of fun with it. This is fantastic at handling these higher play count games. And it's also fairly quick. It's about 10 minutes. It depends on how many people you're playing with, but there's a certain number of rounds. Each round is timed, so you know you're not taking too long. And it's a really cool thing. You're shuffling up these cards. You're either getting blue or red. And if you're blue, one of you is the president. And if you're red, one of you is going to be the bomber. And if you're on the blue team, you want the president and the bomber in separate rooms at the end of the game. If you're the red team, you want the bomber and the president in the same room. And you have someone that controls each room because you have to go and play on either separate sides of an establishment or in actually 2 separate rooms. And in the time allotted, you're kind of going around and you're going to go, hey, I'll show you my card, my secret card, if you show me your secret card.
I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
And you could show a portion of your card, which might just show your your team identification, or it might show your ability. Because again, this is one of those games that has a ton of different roles that can kind of play with how the rules actually work. And then knowing that, you may or may not want to try and influence who's going to get sent to the other room. Because there's this hostage exchange that happens at the end of each round. And so you're trying to engineer who's winding up in this room, who has control of which room, who's going to get to make decisions, because eventually you can vote out the person in charge of a room. And a ton of fun. This, like I said, this is a great high play count game, and it plays 6, but I think I'd rather start this at like 12 players. I think that's kind of my lower end. And so that's why it's so high up on my list, is because it handles that high player count incredibly well. So that's 2 rooms and a boom for me. Alex, your thoughts?
No, I totally agree with everything you said. The interesting roles in this one, I remember distinctly, the mistress and the wife, where they want one of them to be in the room with the president, whether or not he's with the bomber or not.
Right, they're neutral characters.
Yes.
They're not part of a team, and it's super cool.
And basically, they want to be alone with the president at the end of the game.
Right.
And that's how they win, period. Yeah. If they're both together or both with the president, they both lose.
Awkward.
Fascinating. And interesting in that you can kind of use that piece of things to manipulate votes on who controls a room and who's sending people over, which is very important to the game. A lot of fun. Great con game, too. This was amazing. I wish we had been able to play it at Dice Tower Con this year.
Yeah.
But that experience a couple of years ago was a really cool one.
Well, hopefully BGG Con.
Hopefully, if I can make it.
Yeah.
All right. That is 2 rooms and a boom.
Number 1.
All right. I'll go first on this one, not because that's the order, but just because I don't really have an actual list. I'm going to pick A Fake Artist Goes to New York. And Sean, you mentioned this idea of telestrations, this passing things around, kind of the game of telephone. This is not that, but this is the one where one person has not gotten the message. One person is a fake artist. Everyone else knows what they're trying to draw. And it's a ton of fun, and it comes in a really cool, this comes out from Oink Games, comes in a little tuck box. It has different colored markers, and basically the idea is, one person, the moderator judge for that round, is picking a topic within a category, and everyone's going to try and draw it. And the way you're allowed to draw it is drawing one line, and that's it. You can't lift your pen. You can kind of do circles or spirals or whatever else, but once you lift your pen, it's over. You want to give out enough information where you can let people know that you know what it is, but not let the fake artist know what it is. Because the fake artist is going to try and draw as well, not knowing what this thing is, but trying to let folks know that they know what's up. Yeah, really. At the end of the game, you're going to vote on who you think is the fake artist, but then the fake artist, even if they get chosen out, has one chance at picking out what this thing is in order to win the game. Really cool, and plays best the more people you have, because it's always interesting to see who's faking, who's not. I've been on both sides of this. I've been the fake artist, and it's tricky. It's really tricky being the fake artist. Feel like you're flying by the seat of your pants, and it's really tricky being a real artist, because you really don't want to give too much away. You don't want to be that guy that spoils it for everyone.
Right.
But you don't want you don't want people pointing the finger at you saying you don't know what you're doing. So a ton of fun. Love this one.
Yeah, I've still yet to play this. However, it sounds a lot like Spyfall.
Yes.
I wasn't crazy about Spyfall, but I feel like I would like this a lot more.
I think you would.
Yeah, I'm very excited to give this a whirl. All right, well, the last one, my number 1, is The Resistance Avalon, which is on my top 10 list of games of all time. I love this game so much. Now, the amount that I enjoy this is what propels this number 1. It doesn't handle the higher player counts like 2 Rooms and a Boom does. This only, like you mentioned before, maxes out at 10. And I really don't want to play this at 5. I will play it at 6, though not super enthusiastically, but that 7 to 10, I'm fine with it, the full player count. I've had so much fun with this game. But like you said, it is a fragile game. You want to make sure that everyone's kind of, playing the game as it's intended to be played. And sometimes I'll even know that the first time I'm teaching this to people, it may just kind of be a way to kind of go through the motions and how it works. Because very often after that first play, people will be like, I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. I know you explained the rules and I understood what you were saying, but I really didn't get that social aspect of the game.
It's amazing how often the rules of this get messed up by newer players.
Yeah.
I'm continually surprised by that.
Yeah. And I feel like I've probably taught this game a good 50 times, literally 50 times, if not more. So I feel like I've got a good method for teaching the game, but that social component's really difficult. And then if someone has a horrible poker face and they'll just look at it and giggle or blush right away, yeah. So there's some fragility with this game, but once you kind of have it going, everything running full cylinders, it is so good. So it solves that problem that Werewolf has, where there is no player elimination. There's the bluffing aspect. There is just being able to lie straight to people's faces. There's the deduction aspect. There is so much I love about this game. There's a reason it's my, on my top 10, and there's a reason why it's my number 1 7+ player game. So that is the Resistance Avalon. So there you go. My 6 Diplomacy, 5 Werewolf Mafia, 4 Telestrations, 3 One Night Revolution, 2 Two Rooms and a Boom, and number 1 was Resistance Avalon.
In no particular order, Resistance Avalon came up, 2 Rooms and a Boom, Captain Sonar, Fake Artist Goes to New York, and One Night Ultimate Werewolf, which I don't think was even in the order that I read them off.
No, it wasn't.
Excellent.
Yeah, you flipped them around to coincide with some of mine.
List of 6. Woo!
So like we said at the beginning, I think it's kind of interesting that there was so much overlap with our lists and with the lists on the Guild, which kind of just speaks to the fact that there are not a huge number of games at this player count that do it well. So that's something to challenge designers going into the future. All right, well, I think that will then do it for our top 6 games of 7+ player count.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double-Take.
This week, we're looking back at episode 56, Gauchos and Gangsters. That week, we reviewed El Gaucho, of course, and I think we had Stephen Avery on for an interview.
Yeah.
I think you did that. Was I there?
I don't think so.
I don't think I was there. All right.
Designer of Nothing Personal.
Yes,
Co-designer with Tom Vassell.
So El Gaucho, for folks who don't know, this is lighter end, I'd say light medium, dice drafting game is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Where you are gauchos. You're trying to collect sets of cattle and have fun in this wonderful world.
Yeah.
Hooray!
Did you have fun in this wonderful world, Alex?
I did. I had more fun than you did. I gave this a 4 at the time, though I admitted this could maybe get a little lost in the shuffle. And Sean, you gave this one a 3.
Yeah.
Kind of a reluctant 3. You said it is a good game, but it's just not one that my playstyle would have me playing a ton.
Yeah.
Have you played this one since?
Well, no, I got rid of it, in fact.
Yes. Not surprising.
No. Yeah, I mean, if it's a 3, that typically means I'm not going to keep it around. And even some 4s lately, because I'm running out of room, may not make the cut. But yeah, I mean, it was enjoyable enough. It was a solid game. There are some interesting mechanics with the dice drafting. You're collecting those cattle of a particular type, and you're trying to keep them in the correct order. You don't need all of them from 1 to, I think, 14, but the more of them in that order you can get, the better. So maybe I've got 1 through 4 already. Do I want to grab this 8 and potentially cut myself off from the ones in between? So there's some different interesting decisions to make in this game, but ultimately I wasn't crazy. I wasn't necessarily looking forward to playing it again. But I wouldn't necessarily turn it down if it was at a con and set up and, hey, jump in here.
See, I liked it better than you did. I liked the components to this one. I remember that dice fence, the dice pen that they had. I thought that was cool. There's some amount of planning in this game, some amount of setting up actions in advance that you're going to be taking later.
Sure.
That I think worked really well. And it's on the lighter end of the spectrum. It's not your Grand Austria Hotel, which can be I wouldn't come near that with a newer player.
Or Signore.
Correct.
Which is much heavier.
Yeah, absolutely. And much drier. Sean shakes his head. I like this one still a lot, and I've considered playing it, and that's the test. I haven't actually played this one in the time since we reviewed it, but I've certainly considered it. There have been situations where I've thought about breaking it off the shelf. It's still been on my mind as a game. This would be interesting to play. Absolutely.
Huh.
Yeah. So this one for me stays at a 4. Doesn't go any higher, doesn't go any lower. Stays right there at a 4. It is a good game, and it's worth having access to for me because it has a cool mechanic to it and a theme that's going to be engaging for folks who are newer gamers, even though I wouldn't call it gateway.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So let's see what the guild had to say about El Gaucho.
Oh, wait, nothing.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's kind of interesting. This was a game that didn't get a lot of buzz when it was initially released, and apparently we didn't do much to help that at all. But yeah, no one in the guild had anything to say about El Gaucho, and I feel like this is one that could kind of get lost in the shuffle, although there was definitely some merit to this game. So,
Fair enough. So it stays at a 3 for you, Sean, right?
yeah, absolutely.
All right. So that is our double take of El Gaucho. Stays at a 4 for me, and stays at a 3 for Sean. All right, this week we're stealing from the guild yet again because Sylvain Lacroix, when he came with this thread about player color, boy, it blew up. Absolutely blew up, Sean.
Yeah.
So Sylvain posted this on our Board Game Geek Guild, and he was basically asking, what do you look for? I mean, what player color do you prefer? Does this matter to you? And apparently it matters to a lot of people.
3 pages worth of responses, in fact.
Which is nuts.
Yeah.
And what I thought was interesting as a trend was there were a lot of people who would mention that they needed to play as a certain color if it was available, because otherwise they'd move that other person's pieces.
Yeah.
And do you do that as well, Sean?
Absolutely.
So if someone else is playing green and Sean isn't, and Sean hasn't torn them to shreds and thrown a hissy fit,
Sure.
Sean always loves green.
Yeah.
But as you were mentioning, that's one where you kind of have yourself in the perspective of the green player, even if you're not them.
Right. And I also explained why I liked green. I mean, as far as like my favorite color goes, I tend to wear blue a lot. I feel like, well, first off, I'm 35 years old, so I don't necessarily have a favorite color. But as far as what I wear,
You can still have a favorite color.
I don't know.
What's your favorite color,
I'm
Sean?
not 7, Alex.
Is it green?
No, it's not. But it's my preferred player color.
Okay, what is your favorite color?
Probably some kind of blue. I like to wear blue a lot. It matches well with my eyes. I don't have blue eyes, but it brings out my eyes. I have beautiful eyes, Alex. These eyelashes, man, they go on for days. Anyway.
What? Is that a thing you want?
Yeah, beautiful eyelashes.
No, eyelashes that go on for days?
Yeah.
Like, that implies like they're really long.
Hey, why do women put mascara on their eyelashes? So they're fuller, so they stand out more.
I think there's a limit, Sean. Like, I think if the eyelashes are like they're just covering up your eyes and they're getting in the way.
Well, then mine are the limit, Alex.
There's a forest of eyelash hair there.
So anyway, why did I play green? Because green is the color of the Harpers and Lords of Waterdeep. And I remember Will Wheaton mentioned that, hey, the Harpers and Lords of Waterdeep looks like the Guinness symbol. And I like Guinness, Alex. So I said, that's a good reason to pick green when I play Lords of Waterdeep. And when we first got Lords of Waterdeep, we played it a lot, so I kept being green. And then if we play Lords of Waterdeep and then break out another game that night, I'd say, well, so I want to be green so I don't, get confused. And then all of a sudden, I'm just constantly playing green. So that's how I came to play green a lot. And no, I'm not going to throw a hissy fit. I played it. Were you in that game of brass with Len the other week? No. So he wound up being green, and I didn't say a word.
I'm sure you said a word.
I did not say a word.
I'm sure you said something.
We can ask Len what he has to say, but he picked green, and I didn't protest. I didn't say a word.
Yeah.
Yeah, truly.
Sure.
Okay.
My favorite color happens to be green, but I don't necessarily care whether I'm playing them or not. I think the only color that I would even actively avoid, and I don't even actively avoid it, would be blue for some reason. I don't know why. For me, it's a non-issue.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It typically doesn't matter to me. Obviously, in something like Scythe, where your player color is associated with your faction,
right,
then it starts to matter a little more.
Okay.
But in the case of a typical board game decision, what color do you want to play? I'll let other people choose first, and then I'll pick whatever's left. Yeah. Typically. So. But people did weigh in on this, and actually our buddy Matthew came up with a poll on the guild, and he had a few questions on this. Pretty extensive color poll. In most 4-player games, there's usually a choice of blue, green, red, and yellow. If you had first choice with no repercussions, which of these would you pick? And the answer, Sean, was?
Pretty much even.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all like 23 to 26%. So really no preference standing out there. I will say that if at all possible, I also, if I can't be green, then I don't care as long as I'm not red. Because that's what Raquel tends to play. And so if I'm playing red and red's on the board, I'm looking at that as not my piece.
Right.
So, but yeah, otherwise those primary colors in board games, they're pretty even distribution.
Next question up, which color would you prefer most as the 5th player color if there was a 5-player game? And the options, the top 3 were black, purple, and orange.
Yeah.
which I think is interesting, and I could see all of those working really well. And I think the key, obviously, is you want something a little more distinct.
I think so, and that's why I question black, because black tends to, depending on how matte the paint is on the black pieces, if they're glossy, you can still kind of see some definition, but with black, I don't know, it seems like it might be easier to blend in. It just depends on the contrast with the board, I guess. But actually, I like purple a lot, too. If purple's available and, say, green isn't, I tend to like purple.
I think all of those are fine choices, though. I think that's a good top 3.
White was not close to any of them, but more so than some of the other colors. And there were a ton that Matthew listed.
Yes, indeed. All right. If you had the option of always playing one of the colors, which one would you pick? And then he included all of them. So
Right.
You weren't just limited to blue, red, yellow, and green. You could pick a whole number of other ones. And basically, it was those basic 4, though.
Yeah.
With, again, black, purple, and orange still in the mix.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the top 7 colors, if you had to, at least for player colors, oddly enough. All right. And then the suggestion of, he also had a question on there. If you had a choice of switching out blue, red, yellow, and green for a whole new set of player colors,
To be the new standard.
the new 4 standard, which one would you choose? And basically, most people said, "No, I wouldn't choose. We'll
Yeah.
keep it the same.
Yeah.
Those work well."
So when you open up a game and it doesn't use those 4 colors as the base, does that throw you for a loop at all?
It can sometimes. What's interesting to me is when there are components that have player colors on there, or differences in colors between pieces. And this isn't totally what Deus did, but Deus, there was a problem there with the trees or the wood being different colors in different situations. And I think sometimes you can get player color confusion with things.
Well, they did that so that you wouldn't get them confused. So there was a green player piece, and rather than make the wood discs green, which is what were depicted on the cards, they chose to make them brown.
Mistake!
Yeah.
I think you just choose a different player color at that point.
Yeah, probably. But then there's some questions of cost, because I would venture to guess that those base colors are probably more readily available and therefore cheaper than some of the other
Could
colors.
be. I would think a color like white or black would be pretty easy to find too, though.
Yeah, but I think it's just a matter of knowing these are the 4 base colors, so we're going to produce a ton of these cubes. We've got, 1 million of these cubes in these colors, but we've only got 250,000 in these other colors. I don't know. Maybe it's nothing, but I could certainly see that playing a role.
There is that moment every now and then when you don't have those 4 standard, or one of those 4 standard is missing.
Yeah.
When people say, "Oh, I'll play green." Oh, wait, nope, there's no green.
Yeah.
It's usually a very small moment, and then from there on, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Because if green isn't available, it's not like they're going to be identifying with someone else's green pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So it's usually not a big problem. It is that little moment of hesitancy that comes up
Right.
for folks, though.
So I played Deluvia Project the other week with Raquel, and so she had her red player pieces, and there are red cubes in the game for some of her player pieces, and there's also these resource cubes that are the same size, and they're this fuchsia, which is just slightly different than the red. And that was a little weird, a little off-putting. So maybe when you have colors that are so close, or even same colors, I don't know. Maybe it's helpful to distinguish the pieces either in shape or in size of the cubes or whatever. But again, I'm sure there would be some cost issues involved there.
Yes, indeed. All right, on the guild, Chris Schreiber had this to say about all this. For me, it's all about contrast color to the board. So I tend to like yellow or red. Lame Weeble says, for me, it's all about remembering which color I am from game to game. Suzanne said, I make a conscious effort to remain color agnostic. I always just take whatever color is left over. That way others can have their pick of color, and I don't get attached to something and then end up moving the wrong pieces when I don't get that color. And that last part of what she said makes sense, and it isn't how I've been thinking about it, but it does work that way. I very rarely move someone else's piece instead of my own. Unless unintentionally move someone's piece instead of my own. I'm better about that in general these days anyway.
Okay, yeah.
But I might intentionally move someone else's piece. Like, oh, you want to do this? Yeah, no problem.
Yep.
Not anymore. Anyway, yeah. Sean, is that a thought of maybe branching out a little more from green when you can so that you're not thrown off in future games or other games when you don't get green? Like in that game with Lan, were you thrown off when you didn't, because you didn't have green?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I absolutely was. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think like we mentioned before, people are quick enough to just throw me green most of the time.
Yeah, they don't want to get hurt.
Yeah, because I'm totally going to beat them up, Alex. I'm going to sit on them. No, but yeah, it's not something, I'm not thinking in those terms necessarily. At this point, it's just I'm comfortable with green, and if I can get it, great. And if not, then I will work around it.
If you've seen Willy Wonka, by the way, rest in peace, Gene Wilder. He's the Veruca Salt if he doesn't get green.
Excellent.
Yep, gonna go down the garbage.
Isn't she? Wasn't she blue?
No,
she turned into a
wait,
blueberry.
Maybe I'm mixing them up. Veruca, I'm pretty sure Veruca Salt. You have to look this up. This one you have to look up.
I'm good.
Veruca Salt, I thought was the bratty one who wanted the goose.
Okay.
Daddy, I want a golden goose. And then there's the one who chews gum, who turns into a blueberry. But I don't think that's Veruca Salt. I think that's someone else.
Yeah, I don't recall.
I'm going to look this up.
For my money, if I'm going to watch a Gene Wilder movie, I'll go watch Young Frankenstein.
Or Blazing Saddles. Or The Producers.
Yeah. It's odd to me that with all of your gaps in movies, that this is one that you managed to fill in.
I grew up with a lot of Mel Brooks movies.
Yeah. No,
and he was in a lot of Mel Brooks movies.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and also Willy Wonka was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's all a movie. Anyway, well, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode then. Before we do, though, Alex, we have some naming episode runners-up.
So we mentioned that this basically came down to a coin flip, a schwazi-off, so to speak, and the runner-up was actually the name father in this case. Steve O'Rourke came with Cattle Call. I thought that was really cool, because you have this idea of a large group of players mixed with El Gaucho. Thought it was clever, worked really well. That was the runner-up this week. Other ones in the top 6, Rob Rouse with Meat, spelled M-E-A-T and M-E-E-T.
Which is also fitting because Rob on Blue Peg, Pink Peg talks about the meat sweats from the Brazilian barbecue place.
Oh.
Over at Gen Con.
Don't get that.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Are you kidding? We've got one. We got Tucanos. It's
in downtown Albuquerque.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, it's a buffet thing and they bring you a skewer of meat. And
I hear it's crazy.
Yeah, it's super crazy.
A crazy amount of meat.
And you feel super disgusting afterwards, but it's totally worth it.
Oh, man.
And then you get meat sweats.
All right. So meat, obviously, for El Gaucho, and then meat, M-E-E-T, for a lot of people meeting up.
Homonymic.
Yes, indeed. Scott Not Steve came with Highest Chaparral. And I didn't get this one.
It's pronounced chaparral.
Oh, okay, whatever.
Would you say
Clearly, I didn't get it. Chaparral. Chaparral.
Yeah, no, it's chaparral. So there was a Western TV show called High Chaparral, and we're talking about high player counts, and so highest, and then it's a Western theme. However, I went to, in Scottsdale, in Arizona, I went to Chaparral High School. Chaparral High Chaparral was our fight song. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, anyway. Dun, dun, dun,
Wait.
dun, dun.
Oh, at the end, it sounded kind of like ESPN.
No.
Dun, 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 dun.
Nope.
All right.
Not that. So yeah, it's a little personal connection. Highest Chaparral.
Dan S. came with High Player Counts, spelled C-O-W.
I don't think you have to pronounce it that way.
Yep, Counts. Yep, just so people know it's not Counts.
Yeah.
Counts.
All
right. And finally, it was tough to determine whose this was, totally. So Mr. Punter and Ryan Post both came with kind of similar ones. The Stakes Are High and High Stakes, with stakes spelled in both cases, S-T-E-A-K-S. This was a reasonably popular one on the Guild. It's always tricky, though, when you have two that are close together because you don't know who to give credit to.
Yeah.
So, in the top 6 for sure, but not the winner. Congrats again to Scott Sexton, Magnificent 7+, won the coin toss, and won Sean's heart.
Sure did. So, Alex, are you ready for this episode to end?
Yes.
Because you're currently like standing, you're swaying back and forth.
So, full disclosure, I'm wearing a USC football jersey. Go Trojans.
Yep.
We are about to play Alabama in 5 minutes from real time when we're recording this, is when kickoff is. And we're probably going to lose. Not going to lie. We're I think, 12-point underdogs, somewhere in that range. I really hope we win, because I strongly dislike the SEC.
Just to be clear, you want your team to win.
Yes, I do. Okay. I do want them to win.
Just checking on that.
And I want the SEC in general to not win.
Okay.
So, go Trojans.
Securities and Exchange Commission?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
Go Trojans. Fight on. Hope we win. But yeah, I've been standing for like the discussion topic and the top 5.
Yeah.
Which I normally don't do.
Nope.
But I'm in super fidgety mode right now.
Yep, you sure are. All right, well, let's go ahead and end this, Alex. So you can go on, get out of here, and go watch your Trojans lose to Alabama.
They might win. By the time you're listening to this, we may have won. It is Alabama.
Let's go Tide?
No, Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, there you go.
That's what they like to say.
I just remember Hunt for Red October. Nope, wrong movie. Crimson Tide. Anyway, until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Hail Hydra.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on September 3rd, 2016. Our theme music is provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out dicetowernetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Dutchie, go to dukesofdice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please also consider supporting us on Patreon. Thanks to Meeple Realty, who's provided promotional support. Meeple Realty, think inside the box. We'll see you back here next week. Until then, game on! Baseball Highlights 2045, first mention.
Wow, didn't get mentioned at all.
It didn't get mentioned.
I did mention it. I mentioned it.
Oh, you kind of did. Oh, no.
Yep.
Yeah, when did you mention it?
Early on, we were talking about games that the Dukes have recommended that people have picked up.
Oh, yeah, and nobody
picked up
jumped in with the first mention. And by nobody, it's more me, because it's sort of... Anyway.
Do you need to do some push-ups right now, or...
No, I just need to get in the car and get out of here.
All right, well, go.
And get to a TV. Bye.
Bye.
Fight on!